Ladies and gentlemen, two shows in the span of a couple days because it's holiday season, so we always got to record before the holidays. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Look at the beautiful background. It's Thanksgiving. This is the time to give thanks. That's what they say. This is the time to enjoy food with those that you care about. It will be the time to watch football and more on Thursday and this weekend. And why not before all these do we call festivities in November technically? Before the holiday of thanks, enjoy your favorite podcast. Welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, your favorite NFL podcast. At least we hope it is. Myself, the Iceman, introing things as always, Jurg, and I'm joined by. Don't worry, it'll be the three of us here soon enough. I'm joined by our games master, Justin. Justin, how we doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's busy times in the real world, to say the very least. And football is getting interesting, too. We are in the 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, last 6 weeks of the season, as I counted out there. Home stretch, final third, and things are getting interesting, especially after week 12. And we're going to get straight into the conversation. Kind of rare for me to be so concise with it, ain't it, ladies and gentlemen? It's a breath of fresh air. But we're actually going to be quick with the convo. The Podfather is going to be joining us soon. And, of course, to me, name that player. Is always more fun when Rick is here. So we're going to hold off on name that player for now. We will get in the episode. Don't worry, our Games Master will do his Games Master thing. But we're going to wait until the Podfather can join us here a little bit into the episode for us to have some fun with that. So we're going to talk some football right away. And this is perfect because Justin was unfortunately unable to make the most recent episode of the show. So I didn't get to give a direct opinion on this. And this actually, Justin, still kind of works perfectly because considering we saw what happened to him this past Sunday, you could give your take on the matter immediately. Daniel Jones and the Giants did part ways, and a game was played since this decision. And it wasn't great for the Giants. So before to the game itself, we will talk about and we will observe kind of what happened, the happenings of week 12, because plenty happened. We had a snow game, the first snow game of the season to talk about as well. This, I think, takes precedent because this connects the big topic of last episode for discussion, and it'll connect us to start. This is a week 12 convo. So, Justin, me and Rick said everything we wanted to about it. Floor is yours. Your take on the situation on both sides, everything that occurred with Daniel Jones and the Giants that have led us to the point where he was cut and is on the open market right now. Has yet to be signed. Don't know if he will, but he is free to be signed by anyone. So, floor is yours.
Well, it's only been a day. One sec. Excuse me. Of course, that's great timing. But I do expect him to sign with the team. And I think this was a long time coming. I didn't necessarily expect it to happen mid-season, but it does make sense. I'm sure that they worked out some sort of deal to get some of that money off the books in exchange for releasing him so he can get some playing time. It might make sense for him to take the off season or sign a short-term contract and sign a real contract at the end of the year next year. I mean, the beginning of the year next year. You don't want to wait a whole year. But I mean, look, this was a long time coming. The Giants were in shambles. It seemed like a desperation move, not a desperation move, but it seemed like an iffy move at the time when they really signed him. He was coming off one good year. It was one of the only years that he had Saquon fully healthy. I think it was the only year that Saquon played in most of the games that he started. He also had 700 rushing yards that year. I mean, it was not an exemplary year, but it was a good enough year. And there was a lot of issues with that Giants team. They had some issues on defense. It wasn't terrible, but they had some issues. They had real issues on offense. They had no receivers. And Saquon had, I think, 2,000 all-purpose yards. And that propelled them to a playoff game and what ended up being a playoff win against, a weaker NFC at the time. I mean, if you look at their schedule, they didn't play that many great teams. They had the Titans on their downswing. That was the first year the Titans really didn't do much. They had the Carolina Panthers, who all of a sudden were on a massive decline. And they put together a lot of wins against teams that could have beat them, but didn't necessarily deserve to beat them. They weren't cream of the crop teams. Put together a decent record, got into the position to make the playoffs, and then, after a symbolic win against the Vikings, got destroyed by a team that really deserved to be there in the Eagles. So, and even still, I mean, people talk a lot about that game being just like an absolute shellacking. The Giants' flaws were exposed there. It's not like Daniel Jones played that bad. I mean, if you look, I think they had like what 11 drops in that game, like legitimate, like hit the receiver in the hands drops, and just from there on, nothing happened. Their offensive line has been a revolving door. They let Saquon go. If you can't protect your quarterback and you let it go 50% of your offense, do you expect to win? I mean, that's got to account for at least 75%. And look, they were still in position to win some games this year. The defense has greatly improved, but I mean, my guy was sacked 208 times in 6 seasons, and he did not start every game except for one. He's played in 6 seasons less games than Justin Herbert, and he's been sacked almost 50 more times. 51 more times. So, and this is Justin Herbert's 5th year, I believe. And this was Daniel Jones's 6th season with the Giants. So, obviously, there's a lot of issues that needed to be addressed. The fits weren't correct. And I think Daniel Jones was right to ask for his release in this situation because there was no reconciling at this point. They clearly weren't going to match styles of play. He clearly needed to move on so that he can grow. And I think it's at this point probably in the best interest of both parties. The issue now for the Giants is, what do you do? Because you just retooled this defense. It's not like they're the youngest defense in the league, but you're paying them a lot of money. And now you got nothing on offense. You have Malik Neighbors. Jalen Hyatt has been okay, not what you expected him to be. Tyrone Tracy has been a revelation for the Giants, but how many games is this kid going to win you? I don't necessarily think he's Saquon. And you're seeing what Saquon could do now with a good offensive line. What is the answer for the Giants? Is drafting a quarterback in the top 5 going to answer all your questions? Because guess what? You're still going to have the same issues you had with Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And you looking ahead, because I don't think me and Rick even touched upon it too much when we were thinking about it, but the look ahead for the Giants and the job that needs to be done by Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, assuming that Daboll is going to be there for next season as well. It's going to be one of those things where we always say it. It's like, while the quarterback is the most important position on the field, it doesn't necessarily solve all the problems, right? And it's going to be one of these things where they obviously need the talent upgrade. It's probably where they're going to go. But is that kid, whoever it's going to be, right? Because the Giants are clearly trying to fast track their way to the top overall pick, as we're going to start discussing the Week 12 match games here in a moment. They're trying to fast track their way there. It's not looking great. It's really not looking great. So it's going to be something to beholden for sure. And you mentioned, and Rick kind of like bandied about with the idea of where Daniel Jones could go now for the remainder of this season. Could he get a couple games here with a team that is also, their playoff hopes are done? See, test things out. Vegas, we reacted to the news, Justin, in our group chat that Gardner Minshew's out for the rest of the season. And while Aiden O'Connell, yes, they did draft him, there's not really too much of a loyalty, I think, to O'Connell at the end of the day. He's fine, but he's not spectacular. Why not bring Daniel Jones in for 5 to 6 games? Maybe they sign him this week. They wait a week to play him, and then he plays the fall. I don't know. But why not 5 to 6 games? If Tennessee thinks they've seen everything they need to see with Will Levis, just bring a different quarterback there. See if that guy can run the system any better, right? Or just get ready for your new quarterback, soon to be in Tennessee. There's different things, different solutions. Like you said, it could very much be a thing where maybe it's best for Daniel Jones if he kind of resets, keep healthy, keep in shape, do what he can. And somewhat, like, to me, as bad as many lowlights as there were for him in New York, and I always say this, I've said this in other sports too, Justin and what Rick could both attest to this. It's like former top picks do get second chances. It's not going to be high profile, most likely, but he's probably going to get a second chance here. So it will not surprise me if maybe this season he doesn't sign on somewhere else, but Daniel Jones still has some future in this league, right? Because, and I'll admit, I've been the first person on this program to critique him, but I always felt like part of my critiques for him was, well, the Giants are forcing him and trying to do things with him that he just can't do. Like, I think it's one thing where I think we know for the most part what Daniel Jones can and can't do. I think the thing is the Giants started to move too much to making him do way more. And Daniel Jones could probably do it once or twice. He's not a 17 game all pro level quarterback, right? Like,
Well, I think that we've yet to see what Daniel Jones really could be. And this
okay.
is the thing in the NFL is these guys are all superstars in their own right. There are guys that have issues with seeing the game, and those are the guys I think that don't end up ever really amounting to anything. But there's also guys that can see the game just fine, and they're not put in the right position. And I don't necessarily know if Daniel Jones was always put in the right position. The play calling has had his issues. They've had some changes at an offensive coordinator in his tenure there. They've never really had a true number one receiver. I mean, even Malik Neighbors, who is the best receiver on that team by far this year, we've seen it. But he's hurt a lot. They've never protected him. Again, 200 sacks in 10 less games or however many less games than Justin Herbert. He's played less games than Justin Herbert.
He's sacked way more.
Having a full season more than him because he's hit all the time.
Yeah.
And he's injured. And he's banged up. And there's no point in putting him back when your team's out of it. You know? The running game, it's not always been there for him. I mean, again, they had Saquon most of his career. Don't get me wrong. But
Saquon was hurt, like you mentioned before.
They had the same issues. Because the offensive line's got to protect Saquon too. Saquon was I think 2 seasons in a row, he had the worst yards before contact.
Yeah.
It was like -1.
He's behind the line of scrimmage every freaking time.
It's been an issue. And there's been some good linemen for the Giants, but there's been a lot of guys that are hurt. And there's been a lot of guys that haven't panned out. And no matter what they've done, they have not been able to figure out that offensive line. And football is built from the lines out. And as much as I want to sit here and say you have the opportunity to take a quarterback, and I'm not saying they should pass on this opportunity, but especially if you think your guy is there, but you need to protect the quarterback.
Yeah.
And guess what? We're seeing that issue in another team in Ohio.
Yeah.
That drafted in what seems to be an all-time quarterback so far in his career.
Right.
We're 4-7 right now.
Yeah. A lot of praise for Jameis Winston from New Jersey. No, I'm kidding.
They have not been able to put a team around this kid. And they've consistently best friend at receiver, which by all means has panned out. Their run game has been solid, but they have not put a line around Joe Burrow. And just imagine
if he had an all-pro.
If Joe Burrow had a good offensive line. I don't need an all-pro.
At least one player, just one.
Just give me something good.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. And, look what's happening this year when Saquon's getting some really good run blocking. Dude's an MVP candidate, to say the very least. Took stranglehold right now with his last game, with his last performance on the lead in the offensive yardage production when it comes to the rushing yards. Pretty good. I mean, Derrick Henry also had a good game in his own right, let's be fair. But big game by Saquon Barkley, career high in rushing yards for himself last time out. It's something, man, to say the very least. There's some dangerous players out there in the NFL. And Giants don't have any of them, unfortunately. They might. Malik Neighbors could become one. Maybe they do draft a good quarterback, but it doesn't mean anything. And, you mentioned offensive line, Justin. I'll have this note, and then we can move on to discussing Week 12 directly. There's a team that before last season drafted a quarterback, had a really good rookie year, right? Part of the reason he had that really good rookie year is because the offensive line overperformed to what people expected. And look what happened when that offensive line has kind of regressed this season. And they're still a good team, but there've kind of been moments where it's like, they're a good team. They have a winning record. The quarterback production is not necessarily gone super up. You obviously know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Houston Texans. I'm talking about C.J. Stroud. The Texans are a great team. The Texans are going to win their division. And C.J. Stroud is having a relatively good second campaign, but it's not to the level that many of us thought to. Now, granted, to be fair, me saying that, he's still fourth in passing yards in the league. But at the same time, 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's already been sacked more times this season than he was last year in 3 less games. So it's one of those things where, yes, CJ Stroud's still performing well. CJ Stroud in that offense, they have some games here And I think we've talked about they haven't necessarily always looked impressive. They just came off a massive loss to the Tennessee Titans. And part of it is because like the pass rush, or no, excuse me, the pass protection is not as good this year as it was to last year. So offensive line is key. That's why this show, I think we've had a decent draft record when we draft offensive linemen somewhere whenever we do our mock drafts, because we see somewhere where an O lineman should go and be like, yeah, they need one. This really just feels like a year, Justin, where I mean I don't know the offensive line talent off the top of my head, but it feels like you wish, if you're the Giants, you had a second first round pick in this draft, because you wish you could go quarterback and O line with those selections. Like this would be the year where you wish you could have had another first round pick there for yourself. But we'll see. We'll see if they can eventually figure things out. But they didn't do that this past week. 30-7 defeat for the Giants by the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in New York. Well, technically New Jersey, in the Meadowlands. Tampa Bay rough-shotted them. Mike Evans returned from injury. He's getting going a little bit for himself. He had a decent game. Baker Mayfield and co. came in. Plenty of offensive scoring for them, and including, yes, Baker Mayfield with a clear message to Tommy Cutlets, Tommy the Pison, Tommy DeVito, who the Giants selected to start that game. Shout out to shooter sleeve Drew Lock in his glory, but no love.
He might be playing Thursday.
Yeah, he might. So maybe that'll be a chance. But no, it's very interesting to say the very least. That decision by the Giants. You mentioned Malik Neighbors and Tracy. The two of them were the leading receivers and rushers in yardage, respectively, for New York. Just nothing really went right for this team. This team was relatively dangerously close to being shut out. They didn't score until the fourth quarter on a Devin Singletary touchdown. It's not great. So, Justin, first game in the post-Daniel Jones era. Not good. Not good at all.
I think Malik had it right.
Yeah.
Wasn't DJ.
Yeah, wasn't. It's not all on him.
Listen, I'm not sitting here singing the praises of Daniel Jones.
No, I know.
He's a middle of the pack quarterback, I think. Put in the right situation, sure. We've seen crazier things happen, but that situation is usually like winning a lottery ticket. Not so easy to find. And he's now 35? No, he's not. That's an outrageous number. Now he's 30? Oh, he's only 27.
We're talking about Baker?
No, I'm talking about DJ.
Daniel Jones? Oh. Yeah, I was gonna say he's not 30. Yeah. That kid was drafted. He was I think he was relatively young when he was drafted, but he was a 2019 draft, if I'm not mistaken. The year before the 2020 draft.
These kids get drafted at like 23.
Well, not everyone's Bo Nix. So we'll talk about Bo Nix here in a second. But yeah, no, not a great first game by the Giants, to say the very least, in the post DJ era. Defense got rough-shotted because the offense just couldn't really have a lot of sustained drives. There was a good amount of very quick drives for New York. And all in all, things just they didn't look too great. And no touchdowns, no interceptions though for Tommy DeVito, but got sacked 4 times. So not ideal.
Rough too. He took some shots.
Yeah. 4 sacks. 4 different defenders on Tampa from what I'm seeing in the stats. Vita Vea being one of them, and Kalijah Cansey. Ooh, that's 2 guys who you don't want to be sacked by. There are some killers on that Tampa Bay defensive line, to say the very least. So Tampa, big win for themselves as they're trying to claw their way back into the crown for the NFC South. As Rick and I kind of spoke about last week, when the NFC wildcard spot and how hyper competitive it is with some really good teams, right? You got the who are they? I don't know why my mind is blanking. The Packers and the Vikings in the NFC North. You have the Commanders now in the NFC East. Those are all really good teams that all stacked up a lot of wins early. It's looking like a case here, Justin, where some of these teams, maybe their only path is going to be to the postseason is winning the division. And it looks like Tampa and maybe another team, and also the Falcons, let me include that. The NFC South and the NFC West could be those divisions where you'll only get one representative, and that is the division winner itself. So big game, NFC win for Tampa as they are trying to go on a bit of a second half of the season run here. They'll try to continue that as they take on Carolina this next week. So big win for Tampa there. Let's rewind it a little bit to Thursday night. Justin, the weather outside started so delightful, but then it became very much a frightful. It snowed in Cleveland. It was a good amount of snow. And it played into both teams' hands. That was NFC North football, we've ever seen it. Good old fashioned, the running attack was going to decide it. Smart plays by the QBs, big time moments had to be had. That was certainly the case, to say the very least. The Browns completed, I think, converted on every fourth down they had. Nick Chubb, 2 touchdowns for himself coming back, got the job done. Not a lot of yardage on his carries, but got the job done when Cleveland needed him to in terms of finishing the drives off for him. And the Browns escape with a 24-19 victory. The rushing production for the Pittsburgh Steelers was very interesting because, like, overall, they had 120 plus yards on the ground, which is good on paper, but only 3.5 yards a carry, right? Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, not great games for them in terms of efficiency on their carries. Really, the most efficient runner of the for the Steelers was Justin Fields, 26 yards on 3 carries for himself, 3 design plays there. So there was that. Calvin Austin got himself a touchdown, but at the end of the day, it was not enough. And the Browns get that surprise win. And man, I got to tell you, it's Cleveland, freaking Cleveland, man. They'll surprise you. Literally, when we were going into that game, I think I texted you guys, be like, Steelers 8-2, big win against Baltimore, leading the division. So naturally, the Cleveland Browns are going to somehow win this game. And lo and behold, look what happened. Any given Sunday? Nah. Any given Thursday in the snow. Justin, your thoughts about this game and what we saw from it? The little bit of life in Cleveland, not really much for a playoff run, but just that they had some competition in them still, and the Steelers losing. I think this is their first division loss of the year, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's their first or last division, or definitely their most recent division loss.
To be fair, they're 1-1 this season, so technically we're both right. Most recent division loss and their first division loss. So.
All right. Well, I think this is another team that got exposed. I mean, let's face it. What is the issue of the Cleveland Browns last year?
Deshaun Watson.
I'm sorry, of the Steelers last year.
Quarterback?
It was points, dude. They cannot get into the end zone. No matter what they do, no matter what they've done, they're not scoring enough touchdowns. They're just not. I mean, look at their point totals this year. It's, 19, 18, 28, 26. They got in the 30s twice. And then it's 17, 24, 20, 13, and 18. They've only broken 20. Twice?
Yeah.
3 times without scoring 30?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not getting into the end zone. Last year, they had, 300 total points, I think it was? 304.
That sounds right.
Well, let's see where they're at this year.
I could give it to you. They're at 252, which is second lowest in the division. Obviously, the Browns are lower, but it is significantly behind the Ravens, who are above plus 100 on them. And
it's definitely a higher rate, but let's look at the defenses they play next. They play the Bengals. Fine, they'll put up 25 points against the Bengals. They play the Browns again. Are they going to break 20? They play the Eagles. Are they going to break 20? And they play the Ravens in Baltimore. Are they going to break 20? Are they going to play the Chiefs? You know what I mean? Like, even if they're on a better pace than last year, do we see 100 points in the next 6 games?
Probably not. And as good as the Steelers defense is, one of only 2 defenses in the AFC who have allowed under 200 points, the other one being the Chargers, that defense is going to get tired in some of these matchups. And look, I'm not saying this is how do I put this? This is not a sign of demarcation when I say this about the Steelers defense. The Steelers defense has been great, bar none this season. They've had really great games. I'm not denying or taking away from them, but you look at some of the recent matchups they've had. Like, Baltimore's probably the most impressive team they faced in the last 5 weeks. Their opponents have been the Browns, the Ravens, the Commanders. Respectfully, yes, they were hot going into that game, relatively speaking, but still rookie quarterback. And we've started to see some rookie growing pains out of Jaden Daniels. Now, granted, he had an amazing game this past week, but the Commanders still lost. But that's still a team that's learning how to win. Next couple games, like you mentioned it, they're taking on the Bengals this week. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have been pretty good against the AFC North this season, I'll have you know. At least their win-loss record isn't great, but their stats are pretty good, all things considered. Then you mentioned they face the Browns again. It's in Pittsburgh. In theory, they should have the advantage there. They should come back on that one. But then it's the Eagles. It's the Ravens. The Chiefs might be starting to get their act together, Justin. And they finished the season once again against Cincy, which, again, in Pittsburgh, those games in Pittsburgh do tend to be tougher. It feels like when you're the away team, but that's still an uber talented team, which let's be real here. You mentioned the Bengals earlier. The Bengals could be fighting for a playoff spot at that point. Let's not rule them out yet. Like, you're going to be facing some really high-octane, highly motivated offenses in the back half of the season. There's some really good teams. The only bad situation on paper offensively the Steelers are going to face are the Browns again. Because it's Burrow and Chase twice. It's Barkley and Hurts. It's Lamar again. It's Mahomes, who's starting to look like he's catching his stride a bit better. Yes, the Steelers' defense is going to hold its own. I'm not denying that. I'm not doubting that. But eventually, any defense gets tired in this league, and it's probably going to be the case because, like you said, they just can't finish drives. Like Chris, look, for me and Rick, let me just say this: I will take it. The Steelers could score only with Chris Boswell for the rest of the season, and me and Rick, as Chris Boswell owners, will be very happy about that. But Steelers fans will not be happy about that because you want to see some touchdowns, and this is the dangerous aspect of it when you start to enter this portion of the season where you kind of mentioned it with. I mean, it wasn't in the same season. Well, sort of was at the end, but it was more of a year-over-year basis with the Giants and why things fell apart with old Danny Dimes. They got exposed, and they were ultimately like the things that they were good at. They couldn't rely on that to win games. Now it's starting to become a point where did the Podfather knock on my door? No. But the Steelers are approaching a point where it's like if they don't start scoring, the defense could be great. Not going to win a lot of 10-7 games in this league right now. I say that there's going to be a 10-7 game this weekend. Watch, but there's not too many of that in the league nowadays. Despite the fact that the defenses have kind of showed out a little bit more this year, I feel this is still a league where in the regular season the offense is critical. And if you can't finish drives, if you can't consistently get past the middle of the field, give your defense more time. Have the defense starting in good field position. That's when you start to take into account where are you punting from, how good is your punter, where are you punting to, your special teams, etc. Like the Steelers are going to be let down here, I think, in a game or two because of the fact the offense can't get it together. Unless they do, to be fair, But from what we're seeing recently, even in the games they've won, the offense hasn't been impressive. Yeah, they've gotten a couple key conversions in games, right? Like the Steelers game, I think was the big Steelers. Yeah, no, it does. Steelers Ravens was the big example, right? A couple key conversions helped them win that game. You may not get that the next time, right? So I know this is
like,
team.
Look at the Jets game,
right?
I mean, how many of those were real drives, and how many of them did you start on the 1? Did you start on the 10? Because the Jets kept turning the ball over. You scored 37 points, but you got 1, 2, 3 field goals from Chris Boswell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sure, you got a few touchdowns. Don't get me wrong. I think that's probably their highest touchdown output of the year.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to score 3 touchdowns a game.
Yeah. At least, honestly, like especially with some of these offenses, Burrow and Chase could get 3 by themselves. Like
they have multiple times.
Yeah. So against the AFC North so far, so it's going to be interesting. Like Pittsburgh, clearly the defense can adjust. The defense can be as good as they can, but it's the offense that needs to get their act together. It's Mr. Unlimited and what he can do. And maybe is it almost time, as we're going to bring in our own Swiss Army knife of a podcaster into the fold as well? Is it almost time for maybe the Steelers to try to start figuring Justin Fields back into the fold a little bit, get him in there on some more designed plays, and utilize him? Because honestly, got to be real with you, the offense felt like it. I know the scoring was still low. The offense, to me, I don't think Russ has been that much of a maestro. I just don't. So I don't know. That's my take. Maybe Fields it partially. Maybe bring him in on a couple plays here and there could help out this team. They just need something to give them a spark, because that's what the Steelers need if they want to keep their playoff hopes are in a pretty good spot. Let's say good wild card positioning hopes. I'll phrase it like that. So, Podfather, how we doing?
How dare you besmirch Mr. Unlimited?
Oh, please. One of my personas on the show has been this. On the Iceman tier of hatred, Russell Wilson is squarely towards the top of the tier list.
Well, I mean, obviously, Trent Baalke's up there too. I know that, but
Of course. And Ryan Tannehill, don't forget.
Ryan Tannehill hasn't done anything bad this year, though, so I think he's okay.
I know because he's been off the field.
Anything, period. He's not in the league.
I'm the biggest Ryan Tannehill fan this season because he's not playing.
When is Ryan Tannehill going to be the name that player just to mess with Jerg?
Coming.
I was gonna say I feel like I might figure it out immediately.
You think that, but you could be wrong. You never know.
Hey, if
Justin, you really truly know the man that you despise.
If Justin says Texas A&M within the first 2 hints, it's a good chance it's Tannehill or Johnny Manziel.
You know that could be Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, it's one or the other.
Or Mike Evans. You know.
Yeah, but Mike Evans is like accomplished. So if Justin says like I don't know how many Pro Bowls Evans made off the top of my head, but if Justin's like 7 Pro Bowls out of Texas A&M, it ain't Tannehill or Manziel. I promise you that.
I suppose to each their own.
No, that's a fact. Tannehill hasn't made that many Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
Okay, as the Podfather joins the fray here and enjoys the turkey of the Thanksgiving table is what the Podfather is. The meat and potatoes of the program has joined us. Shout out to my guy. So I think we've talked about everything. Let's continue on in the real quick. Actually, we could get Rick's opinion here before we continue on. Rick, quick opinion: Steelers lost a winter game. Well, basically, it was a winter game with the snow falling against the Browns. I know we kind of discussed it a little bit on last episode, but just your thoughts. We discussed the X factor for the Steelers going forward is finishing drives. What do you think the Steelers need to do in order to actually start finishing more drives in the end zone before we move on?
Well, I mean, it's a twofold thing, right? It's either got to be they have to figure out their running attack because Najee Harris and Jalen Warren haven't really been the 1-2 punch that I think we expected them to be. I mean, Harris is having by his measure, I guess, an average season. He's at 750 yards on the ground so far, but Jalen Warren really hasn't been that good of a spell back. I figured that a team that's 8-3 would have 2 guys that are closer to 1,000 and maybe 600 at this point. But Warren, I know he hasn't been fully healthy most of the year, but he's got to improve his production a little bit. And secondarily on the receiving end too. I mean, got to find somebody else to throw the ball to. I thought that they were going to be a significant player in the deadline for one of these marquee receivers. And, Mike Williams has 1 catch in 3 games so far. So it hasn't which again, not to their detriment because Ayuk got hurt. He was going to be a big target. Kupp was going to be a big target, but then the Rams started winning again. And then the other guys, they were not going to reunite with Deontay Johnson. So that was never going to happen. So Mike Williams was kind of the best option that they had, but he hasn't really stepped up to the plate like I think they wanted him to. And, I think that's really the issue is that you got lacking components in skill position sets that have really, when push comes to shove, you can't rely on throwing the ball to Pat Freiermuth every single time. I mean, he's great, don't get me wrong. I love the man, but you can't rely on him to have every single play go his way because even the Steelers of old, even when you had Heath Miller kind of being the truck as the tight end position, they still had, blasts from the past at running backs that were still, really taking their toll. I mean, I go back to those days when, guys like Willie Parker were in the backfield and even guys like Abe Mazzeraway were back there in the backfield that were making their stride. And their receivers were still really good too back then. Hines Ward, obviously, and Randall L., those guys, but they don't have that right now. I mean, they're lucky that they're 8-3. What that means, of course, is that we're a win away from another Tomlin winning season. I mean, how about that? But again, one of the things you guys always talk about, especially I think in this case, if the Steelers finish 9-8, that's going to be a big cause for concern. I think that's going to be a big wave of maybe change in the Steelers organization because you go from 8-2, and you're telling me that you and Justin, I hate to bring this up because you and I know what this is like. But you go from 8-2 to 9-8, it's like going 8-3 to 8-8 with Brett Favre as your quarterback after the injury that happened to them. So, what the promise was there, but the Steelers cannot afford in this league in the 2024 to win based on defense and special teams alone. Love Chris Boswell. He's great. but he ain't going to put up 18 points a night. And the defense is great, but again, good defenses, they tire when they're on the field for too long. So I feel like that's kind of where you have your issues.
Realistically, Boswell could put up the 18-9. They could still lose.
Oh yeah.
Because we went over the schedule, Rick, for the Steelers. They're going to face the Bengals twice, which means facing the guy who's still leading the league in yards, by the way, after his freaking bye week, by a wide margin. You have that guy. You face the Eagles, who Saquon Barkley just had an MVP caliber performance.
He did.
Mahomes and the Chiefs, like that offense, that Bills loss may have been what they needed to wake up a little bit because Mahomes had arguably his best game of the season, at least production from a pure production standpoint.
Yeah.
And like and they face the Ravens again. The Browns, the second matchup this year, are the worst offensive opponent on paper that the Steelers are going to face.
Yeah.
So, like, yes, the defense is tough. I don't doubt the defense can stop any of those teams on a drive or two. It's going to build up. It's going to build up if this team can't get consistent first downs and more than just like critical third down conversions.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where you have to look into, what you're going to do with that quarterback. Because again, the two-headed attack that you have just isn't working. But they also don't have the players to finish the drives out. So that's kind of why they're stalling, I feel like. And that's why Boswell's having as good of a year as he has been having, both for my fantasy team and for the actual Steelers. So
Indeed. All right, let's move on. We've talked Giants. We've talked Steelers. Let's continue to talk some more. A good amount of games happen. Just some cliff notes on some of these matchups. The Dolphins defeated the Patriots, keeping their very, 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 very slim chances of the AFC East crown alive. But they are keeping good wild card odds alive as we get close to that. But we'll give like a very brief look into the wild card picture. Maybe come next week's episode, following all the Thanksgiving, following Thanksgiving games, following this next week of games. I think week 14 is when the wild card hunt starts to look a bit more interesting, and we might see a division or two clinched. Well, actually, I think only one on paper can be clinched at the end of this next week of football. So we will see what that has in store for us. The Tennessee Titans upset the Houston Texans. Joy. That happened. The Detroit Lions, business as usual. The Colts, who tend to be a spoiler for some teams, not this time. The Lions handled it relatively short order with a good game. Defense completely shut down anything Indianapolis could do. Kansas City Chiefs, I mentioned the game that Patrick Mahomes had on paper. He put up some pretty good yardage for himself. 269 yards, nice 3 passing touchdowns through the air. Noah Gray caught a couple scores for Kansas City. But it was a close game, as this was the best game that Bryce Young's had in quite a while. 263 yards for himself, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions for Bryce Young. The Panthers are starting to be a little bit competitive here, boys. They have 3 wins. They're not the worst team in the league like we thought after the first couple weeks of the season. So a little bit of a revival in Carolina. Probably not, but, we wait to see what David Tepper's team is going to do for the remainder of this campaign. And that, for the most part, was a lot of the interesting games in the 1 o'clock hour. But there were 2 in particular, I think, that really stood out, of course. And that was the Minnesota Vikings and Chicago Bears game, and the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Commanders game. The Minnesota Vikings were up by a good chunk of points. They were up 27-16 on the Chicago Bears in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. And it's like, okay, you're up with how much time? It looks like it's over, right? It looks like it should be over. Chicago Bears come in, they score, get the 2-point conversion with 22 seconds to go, get the onside kick. Caleb Williams completes a 27-yard bomb to DJ Moore. And then Cairo Santos kicks a game-tying field goal to force overtime. And the Chicago Bears then punt on their first possession. The Minnesota Vikings win it. Experience Chicago football, ladies and gentlemen. And the Minnesota Vikings took a victory there. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys get a massive upset win over the Washington Commanders this week. Jaden Daniels started to show a little bit again, but also kept showing some of those rookie mistakes. 7 carries, 74 yards, a touchdown, yes. 275 yards through the air, 2 passing touchdowns, yes. But 2 interceptions, that was tough. The Dallas Cowboys had a running attack this week. That's been a while. And it looked like we were going to get another situation similar to that of the Bears and the Vikings. A absolute dart from Daniels to McLaurin, who then yards after catch took it to the end zone, but missed the kick. and then a return touchdown, second return touchdown of that fourth quarter, mind you, for the Cowboys, sealed it. It was a 34-26 win in Washington for the Dallas Cowboys. So, boys, two massive games that took you in a fluctuation of emotions there at the end of the fourth quarter. Rick, you could touch upon either of them first. I'll throw both games to you. The excitement of these two games and the results and what they mean ultimately as we head into the last third of the season.
I think if you're looking at the Vikings Bears game, I think you kind of have to look at it from a couple different angles. Like the Bears they're just a snake bit franchise now, man. They really are. Like the week prior with the Packers, they had a golden opportunity and it got blown away. And then this time, call it youth and inexperience, but there's no reason for Caleb Williams to be taking a sack the way that he did and that overtime possession, because that was a killer. Like you have to know. You have to be spatially aware of where you are and what your team needs at that point in time. I thought for sure this game was going to end up at a tie, man. I really did, because it was just the clock was running down on that one. And credit to the Vikings. They hung in there. Sam Darnold had a great game. Aaron Jones continues to just be a terror in this NFC North. No matter what uniform he's wearing, he's still a nightmare for these other teams to match up with. And I think this was huge because, if the Vikings lose this game, they're 2 games back of the Lions. And, they have to play them one more time. But, the Lions are looking like a really good team. So, the Vikings are keeping pace. So in a division where we thought Detroit was going to run away with it nice and easily, Minnesota's not going quietly. So that's a big positive for them. The Washington game showed the youth again of the Commanders team, and the inexperience and just the naivete of a squad who I think they're still fine because they're a game up in the wild card hunt. They're a game up on Arizona and somebody else, I think. So they're still fine for right now, but you're starting to see some little bobbles here and there. I think that they'll be okay. I think they can right the ship because they really only have, I would say, maybe 1 or 2 more difficult games coming up in their schedule. But I feel like, they're in a good spot. And, I think this is a Commanders team that I know we talked about this before the season, Jared. This is a team that I think if they can win on Sunday and they go into their bye week 8-5, they can breathe because no one's hurt and they're in a really good spot to do something really, really good. And they got there. Like, we said for them it was more of a marathon to get to the bye week because they had a very bad one while they're coming up on it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough loss, but again, we always talk about it. Divisional games are difficult because they're very unpredictable. You never quite know what's going to happen on a given basis. And again, it took 2 kickoff return touchdowns and a missed extra point to undo the Commanders this week. So, again, I know we talked about this in our chat. Not sure what Jerry Jones is thinking about.
We'll get to that. I promise you. We will touch upon.
Let's get to that because I'm not quite sure what he's thinking. But
I want to get Justin's thoughts on the games first, real quick, and then we will talk about Jerry Jones and his dementia kicking in. Would that be insensitive? I don't know. Yeah. Justin, the results to you, your take, and also I think, Justin, to tie in what we've I feel like we've talked about this through several episodes throughout the season, but the importance of picking up wins early in the season for some of these teams, right? And the Minnesota Vikings and the great start to the year they've had, even though they've still been winning games, they've started to look a bit shaky, right? But they're still finding a way to get big wins like this. And the Washington Commanders, who surprised us to start the season, like Rick said, starting to go through the growing pains that a young team like that does. But the wins early in the season have them in a spot where they are the 7th seed by a pretty solid margin. Like Rick mentioned, they're a game up on the Cardinals, and they have 2 more wins and 1 less loss than Tampa right now. So I don't know how that math checks out. Is that like a game and a half, 2 games, I would say, over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? So the results of these games, Justin, and how important it is for, Minnesota continues to win, whereas Washington, they're really still benefiting from the great first half of the season that they had.
Absolutely. Look, let's not. I think that people really blew out of proportion the things that Washington did. I mean, don't get me wrong. They looked really good. They play in a tough division. They won some games that they probably shouldn't have. They won some games that they should have too. I mean, look, the Giants should have beat them in that first matchup. The kicker got hurt, and they kept going for 2. They had no backup. They lost by, 4 points? How many times did they go for 2? 3 times? How many times did they go for it on 4th down and field goal range? 4 times? I mean, it really should not have been that close of a game. Washington pulled it out. They lost. They won by the kicker. They died by the kicker. It happens. It happens to the best of teams. It happens to the worst of teams. This is a much improved Washington franchise, but this is still a really young team, like you said. And, we can look at their schedule coming up because I haven't really analyzed it, but I don't anticipate them all coming out of nowhere and winning this division. It's still not going to happen. Do they make a wild card? Sure. Can they surprise some teams in the playoffs and maybe build upon something next year? Absolutely. But this is not Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, winning MVP season. We have to pump our brakes here with this team. And it took a 3-game losing streak against some good teams to realize that. And sure, the Cowboys are the least of the 3 teams that they lost to, but they lost to the Eagles, which is a fair loss. The Eagles are one of the best teams in football, even though some people don't want to admit it. The Steelers have one of the best defenses in football. They're extremely well coached. Do we really think they're not going to beat the Titans this week? Do we think that they're not going to beat the Saints the week after? They have a chance at a revenge game against the Cowboys in the last week of the year. They could easily be a 10-win team. And we're talking about a Commanders team that nobody thought was going to win 10 games this year. Nobody knew what to think about this team.
Right. And Rick, bringing it up again real quick, the late bye week they're getting, it's kind of maybe going to come for them at the right time when you think about it, Justin. They've got the great start. They have one last game to get there, and then they could reset going into the last stretch of the season. That's
very true, too. And luckily, they haven't really been injured. The only argument I'd make against that is rhythm is a very, very, very important thing for young teams. So as good as it would be to get some rest, it's not always great to break up your rhythm. Although I guess if you're on a 3-game losing streak, it might be great to break up that rhythm. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah. And you were going to talk about the Vikings, I guess.
Yes. The Vikings are well coached, man. I mean, offensively, they are supremely talented. I mean, did you see how many catches Justin Jefferson had last week in regulation? 1 catch. And guess what? Jordan Addison lit them up. Anytime they needed a conversion, TJ Hawkinson lit them up. Aaron Jones finally broke the seal on his touchdowns. They are so talented on offense. And Brian Flores has that defense that we thought was just absolutely garbage, just humming right now. They look great. They really do. They look fantastic on defense. I mean, again, are we sitting here saying that the Steelers? No, but they are a good team. They are a very complete team. They're not the best at anything, but they're good at almost everything. And it's going to be interesting. Did we see them play against the Lions yet? Has that game happened?
Yes, the Lions beat them earlier in the season in Minnesota, October 20th. But it was a close game. It was 31-29.
Oh, it was their first loss, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then we're expecting again. So we'll see what happens when these teams meet later in the season, and it really might mean something.
Yep. Week 18, it's the last week. The division could very much be on the line, so we'll see. So Minnesota going good, great position for themselves. And by the way, you mentioned the defense, Jonathan Grenard, who we joked about in the offseason with Houston, Minnesota basically swapping their star pass rushers, Grenard to Minnesota and Hunter to Houston. Grenard, 9 sacks on the season. So he's going good. And Andrew Van Ginkel, kind of a bit of jack of all trades for them, right? He's got a couple interceptions, a forced fumble, a couple sacks.
mean, I got news for you. They have some quiet, really, really good linebackers because Blake Cashman has been excellent for them too. A guy that they got from Houston as well, who came over via the Jets, who has always kind of been like an unsung guy for all of his teams. Makes a ton of tackles. He's everywhere on the field. He's a really, really good, quiet defensive player.
It's the veterans on this team are performing for a team that was on paper and coming into the season was a relatively young team on that side of the ball, right? Because they've made a lot of defensive draft picks the last few years, and it's been the defense because the ageless wonder, Harrison Smith, that dude is still there, and he led them in tackles in the Chicago game.
What is it, 53 now?
You're close. You're almost there. Before we continue on talking about the rest of the games, Rick alluded to it here briefly. We'll talk about the comments made from Jerry Jones here recently, literally today as we're recording this. Well, we're live, so I don't need to say that. But Jerry Jones apparently is not ruling out not just Mike McCarthy staying in Dallas, but a contract extension. That's interesting to say the least, as we see the Podfather's reaction. But Justin has the immediate reaction, so we'll go Justin, then Rick.
Jerry says a lot of things, a lot of times that, the only thing that I have to say about this is that to sit there and stand by your coach in a time where coaching really isn't the issue. They're banged up. They didn't really have a super talented roster. There's a lot of things that I think are wrong with this team that aren't coaching. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of time with some pretty talented rosters to do something. And he's won 0 playoff games there, I think it is. Is that correct? 0 playoff wins?
I'll confirm. I think they may have won.
Well, they didn't win last year, that's
one.
for sure.
I don't think McCarthy was there for it.
It might have been the Jason Garrett win, actually. Yeah, Justin might be right about that.
I'm not sitting here saying that it's the best move I've ever heard, but I do understand the idea of standing behind your coach during a rough time where coaching isn't necessarily the issue there.
They do have one playoff win with Mike McCarthy.
Oh, who did he?
In 2022, they went 12-5. They lost in the divisional round to San Fran, which means they got to win in the wild card round. If it will show me the dang playoff picture as I'm trying to look. In the wild card round, they defeated Tampa. They beat Tom Brady in his last career playoff game.
Yeah, but again, grains of salt there. Tom Brady won that division basically on half a leg.
I was gonna say he was 8-9 that year, right?
Yeah,
9-8. It may have been 9-8.
They were in a rough division that year. That was when the NFC South was really nothing.
Yeah, 8-9.
I mean, they were 8-9. I hate to make they were 8-9, and they were a loss away from a 4-way tie at 7-10.
Oh my God, I remember that. Do you remember the game against the Panthers?
Yep, Mike Evans
went off. Arnold was leading them, and then Mike Evans went off. He had like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Went nuclear.
Yeah, won me my fantasy championship.
There we go.
Yep.
I was in a 2-quarterback league, and I had to start Sam Darnold and Gardner Minshew because Tua in his first real starting season and someone else were hurt. Kyler tore his ACL.
Yeah.
I had no quarterbacks. And Mike Evans and Chris Godwin combined for 80 points in that league.
I hate to be that guy, but I'm going to bring this up. Do we remember how that season ended?
For who?
Just in general?
In week 18.
Oh.
No.
The Colts-Texans tie that killed Justin's hopes of doing anything?
No, it wasn't a tie.
You wanted it. You wanted
it. Should have been a tie.
It should have been a tie. Yes.
It went for 2.
The tie that should have been.
Lovie Smith ruined your
sacrificed the number 1 overall pick to go for 2.
Yep.
And then fired Lovie Smith the next week.
I mean, they got CJ Stroud. So
to be fair, they didn't get CJ Stroud because David Tepper's a moron. So
Lovie Smith should get a ring if CJ Stroud gets a championship.
Well, I mean, Stroud's having a sophomore slump. Let's be honest here. Here's what I'll say about the Jerry Jones thing. Just briefly, do you know that SpongeBob episode where Krabs feels like he's old? Yeah. And a couple times they have the image of him being walked across the crosswalk by a Boy Scout fish. That's what you do, Jerry Jones. Just like, come on, Grandpa, like away from the radio microphone, please. Just go get away.
They really do need to keep him away from the microphone this year. He's having a rough time.
He's going through it. I mean, look, Cowboys fans are going through it. I do understand that, but like, you gotta move on because if you're gonna tell me that you don't want Belichick anymore, I get that. But if you're gonna tell me that you have a chance to draft potentially Shedeur Sanders and you're not gonna do it because you believe in Dak Prescott that much, and because of that you're gonna possibly forgo that chance of bringing Dion back to coach this team. Dion can handle this media circus of Dallas, and Dion can handle the Jerry Jones nonsense. I don't think Mike McCarthy has it anymore for Dallas. I really don't. And it's sad that this is a guy who I thought would have been great as the Jets head coach at one point in time. It's unfortunate. Although it would have been hilarious to watch McCarthy be the Jets head coach and then have Rodgers come back because they just didn't like each other. So that would have been hilarious. Great. That's a Woody Johnson move. Bring in the head coach, and then 2 years later, bring in the quarterback that he can't stand. It's the odd couple all over again. But yeah, Jerry, stay away from the microphone, please. Thank you.
Let's start on the Jets.
Let's. I know the joke is low-key a Jets podcast, but let's stay away from that. I think we need to give it 1 or 2 more weeks before we have a all-encompassing rant on the Jets 2024 campaign.
Rick, this was the best week of the season football-wise. There were some excellent games. We saw, a couple overtime games. We saw a thriller in Washington against Dallas. The Jets didn't have to play, and it was just a fantastic week for me football-wise, and we don't have to ruin it by talking more about it.
Well,
right, we don't have to.
There's one thing that I will say that did kind of ruin it for you as a Jets fan. Somebody actually won the Dolphins-Patriots game. It should have been in a 0-0 tie. That would just make things better for all of us.
I don't mind. I never mind watching the Patriots get blown out.
Well,
I know, but the Dolphins, enough with you guys.
Speaking of teams that wish it had been a 0-0 tie, the San Francisco 49ers got shellacked by the Green Bay Packers in Wisconsin, 38-10. Oh, good God in heaven. We were talking before you came on, Rick, about how they're now in the NFC because the Commanders have a pretty good hold on the 7th seed, and they could further increase that hold this week. And the Vikings and the Packers have both benefited from the good starts they had. Green Bay still picking up wins when they didn't have Jordan Love, and Minnesota with the hot start they've had. And after their back-to-back losses, they haven't lost since. So they go win streak, lose 2 in a row, win streak again. Those teams are in a good spot. It feels like the NFC South and the NFC West could very much come down to positions where only the division winners get there. And lo and behold, the 49ers did not do themselves any favors. No chance of an upset win in Green Bay this time. Big loss here for San Fran, boys. Obviously they were injured. Brandon Allen played. Brock Purdy. I don't know what the early prognosis is on him. I don't know if he's projected to come back this week.
He practiced, I think, yesterday.
He did? Okay.
Yeah, not in full, but I think they said that it's gonna be a game time decision.
I did think about this too. I looked at the roster after we mentioned the Brandon Allen thing. They started the wrong backup quarterback because who their QB3 is? The Spaceman, Josh Dobbs. He would have beaten Green Bay.
Honestly, yeah. I don't. Why did they go with Allen? Does he just understand the Shanahan scheme more?
It's possible that he does understand it a little bit better, I suppose. But Josh Dobbs was a great story last year. He should have been somewhere closer because especially when they were going down further and it wasn't working because it wasn't working. Here's the deal with the Niners too. If you want to go through just the quick brief part of the standings, so they're a game behind Arizona, who's a game behind Washington. So Washington's the 7th seed, Arizona's 6 and 5, so they're about a half game back. Then you got a 3-way tie for below that between Tampa, the Rams, and the Niners. You know where the Niners rank in that 3-way tie?
Last.
Dead last. Because the head-to-head with the Rams eliminates them from further contention. So you're talking about the Niners who were a player or two away from being Super Bowl champions last year, now being the number 11 seed in the 16-team NFC.
We're talking about luck at this point for them to get in the postseason. They need it. Huh?
Injury luck?
Just luck in general. They need some kind of luck to go their way.
I would call Andrew Luck and see if he can still play.
You probably could. But no, like, and this is a team that we've seen, in the history of this podcast, they've kind of gone on second half runs, right?
Yep.
They're going to need another one this year. They're very much going to need another one this year if they're going to come back. It's difficult. They're last in the division. The Seahawks, with their victory over the Cardinals, which the Podfather called last week, ended up, with the win victory, stifled Arizona's offense and cost me my fantasy game this week as well because they stifled Kyler Murray. They allowed, thanks, Rick. They now have first place in the division, so maybe a division crown might re-strengthen the Ring of Honor case for Geno Smith there. But a big win for the Seahawks there. Yeah, it's true. It's dang true. But it's big. Like San Fran, because they split their games with Seattle, right? This season, they beat Seattle once, and they lost to them. So it's not looking good for the 49ers. It's going to take a next level performance in the back half of the season. And you know what? We say that, but if maybe this is an opponent that they could potentially beat here in week 13, they might have a chance. Oh, they're facing the Bills in Buffalo.
In what is supposed to be a blizzard.
I mean, to be fair, like they have a
That's
good.
the one thing I think that's in their advantage. I mean,
I was going to say they have a good
travels.
running attack. Defense and running travels, and granted, running attack didn't do great this past week, but in theory, they can have a good rushing attack. Like, I never understood when the Aaron Rodgers last playoff game in Green Bay, when the Niners went to Green Bay, it's like, never in my mind did I think the Niners, like, rushing attack was going to struggle that game. They're a running team. This is Kyle Shanahan we're talking about.
So, the Niners that we think of should have no issue in this game. However,
the reality,
these are not those 49ers. I mean, look at the hallmarks of this last Packers game. They had 44 rushing yards. They gave up 100 yards and 3 touchdowns to one player.
Yeah.
On the ground. Not passing. On the ground.
I feel like it's been a while since they had that bad of a rushing.
This is not the same 49ers team, and it doesn't help that they're missing, 3 starters on offense and 4 starters on defense.
Yep.
Which has become a trend for them, and usually they're able to overcome it. But the more you pay guys, the more your depth suffers. And these are going to be hard times now for the 49ers. They're going to have to figure out, what they got to do to make sure that they are in the right position to start overcoming some of these hardships. Because if not, they're going to have a pretty high draft pick.
Yeah. And big decisions are going to come for John Lynch and company this offseason because of how much success they've had, because they've won multiple NFC championships. Like, this is just a grace period year for them if they're having this down year. At this offseason, what is this roster going to look like? You paid Ayuk, and he was not having a good season before he went down to injury. So you got to hope that he can come back next year and be the number 1 receiver you paid him to be. You kind of have to make a decision between McCaffrey, Kittle, and Samuel. Which one of those guys is going to live to see the light of San Francisco in 2025? And also just around that roster, like some big decisions coming. And also, let's not forget, big clock Brock. Next year's going to be last year's rookie deal. He was a Mr. Irrelevant, so no 5th-year selection. Oh, definitely no 5th-year option. Decisions in San Fran. So while Seattle defeated the Arizona Cardinals, the Bird teams went on a run to end off this week because the Eagles defeated the Rams. They crushed them. We kind of made note of it before, but Saquon Barkley absolutely tore up the Rams and my fantasy team this past weekend with 255 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts also had a pretty good game. A relatively decent game. A.J. Brown had a phenomenal performance. And the Los Angeles Chargers fell to the Baltimore Ravens in the Harbaugh Bowl, which I saw the stat that apparently John Harbaugh is undefeated against Brother Jim. So there's that for you. But the Bird teams, they get the victories. The Ravens pull closer to the Steelers in the standings, boys, which is big considering their soon-to-be rematch here in the coming weeks. And the fact that this Ravens team is at 8-4 and a relatively down game for Lamar Jackson, overall stat numbers wise, but he did his thing. He did what he had to do. Derrick Henry helped carry the load, and this team is still looking good, to say the very least. And you have Philly. This was a big game for separation for themselves against Washington. They beat Washington in that game recently, and now you have this kind of big advantage. You have 3 games, Three more games if you're Philly before you take on Washington. Washington has their bye week coming up soon. So this Eagles team, you talked about momentum earlier, Justin. This Eagles team could be starting to hit their stride at the right time here because they won a bunch of games in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've gone undefeated since that Tampa game. So that's that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 wins in a row. And apparently undefeated after Nick Sirianni decided to shave his whole head. So maybe he figured something out there. But yeah. Any thoughts on the Birds, boys, before we move on?
We hit a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles are hitting their stride at the right time, which is good for them because it's better to hit your stride now. I mean, again, this is their division to lose really because the Commanders are kind of falling off a little bit here and there. The Ravens game was a little tougher than I thought it was going to be for them. I thought they were going to have a little bit more of an easy time. But again, I think that just shows the vast improvements that Jim Harbaugh has made with the Chargers to that defense and to that mindset there. I think that really has helped them out considerably. So it was a good matchup and one that depending on how things shake out, we could see again come playoff time, but in Baltimore instead of in Los Angeles, depending on how the divisions shake out. So.
Yes, indeed. Should be interesting to say the very least. All right, boys, this is a good little wrap up here, and we're going to get more into. We already talked about it a little bit here, but we're going to start giving some magnifying glasses to the playoff races here in the standings in the last third of the season as we have here. But we mentioned it, the wild card hunts. It's going to get more intense. No team has yet been mathematically eliminated. We're probably going to start seeing that here in the next week or so. And we have a chance to have a division clinched in the next week or two here as well. That being said, and interesting conversations around the NFL world, to say the very least, to be had. But I think I think the three of us agree. Let's give it a week to let more results come in, see more stats, see more marination before we decide on it. Because interesting, Josh Allen's not an MVP candidate right now. Moving on from that, before we get into the pick challenge,
He's still bitter about Haley Steinfeld, folks. Just letting you know.
I'm also just going to say a guy that's being outpassed by two rookie quarterbacks in passing yards this season isn't a top 3 MVP candidate to me, but what do I know? Anyways, not a lot, to be fair. Rick, we decided to wait. We decided to hold this off until you came on to the show because while everyone loves the favorite game here, it's better together when we're here. So, in a rare... Is it the middle of the show if we're not really going to go there? Anyways, in a rare, later in the show edition of this game, I think the first time it's happened, actually. It's time for another edition of everyone's favorite game. Name that player. Justin?
Okie dokie. So, we have an 8-time Pro Bowler out of Ohio State University. Played for 3 different teams. And I'll leave you with that.
8-time Pro Bowler out of Ohio State. Well, hold on, Justin. You missaid it. It's the Ohio State University.
I didn't go there.
You got to add the. No, you're contractually obligated to actually add the whenever we talk about the Ohio State University.
See this red shirt here? This is Queens College.
That's fair, and you are a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, right.
We're a Hall of Famer. We all are. We all are. Our portraits aren't up there, but we know. Okay.
I had to take it down during COVID.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. We got lost in the renovations. Anyways,
8-time Pro Bowler out of Ohio State.
Ohio State.
And he played for 3 different teams.
And 3 different teams.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I don't think this guy played for 3 different teams, but I'm not sure. I think he might have been on one, and I don't know if he was an 8-time Pro Bowler, but there's a couple good names that are floating around in my head, but I think I'm going to lock in with one at the very least just to start things off. I don't know, Jerg, what side of the ball are you thinking? If you have an idea.
In recent years for Ohio State, it's been the offense that has been getting highly drafted and have been making the rounds. But that leads me to believe this leads more towards the defensive side.
Okay.
And the 2 most successful Ohio State players that I can think of in my head in recent years, like last 6, 7, 8 years, they don't reach the Pro Bowl requirement yet, nor do they reach the team's played requirement yet. So it's tough.
Yeah. All right. Here's my first guess. Because I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball here. James Laurinaitis.
Ooh, that's a good shout. You know, Rick, you should probably start coming up with some of these guys. That's not it, but it's a good shout.
Yeah. I had a few other names in my head too, just because I was looking at like that linebacking core of guys that it could be. But I was trying to decide between one of 3, and that was the one I went with. Jorg, I don't know if your boy Pat McAfee at his show would be able to help you out, because I don't know if you know the guy I'm talking about. I don't know if he played for 3 teams. I don't think
AJ Hawk. No, I don't think AJ played for 3 teams. Nor do I think he made 3 Pro Bowls either.
Well, it's 8, right? Justin said.
My bad. 8 Pro Bowls. He may have made 3, but I don't think he made 8.
My other funny guess would have been Maurice Claret, because God knows that would have just been hilarious.
I'm willing to use that because the only I was trying to think of so like I said, recently it's been offensive, right, for Ohio State. That makes me think defense. The first name that came into my head of guys who have at least 8 Pro Bowls, and I know this guy played for multiple teams, was Ronnie Lott, but I don't think Ronnie Lott played for the Ohio State.
I don't think he did.
I don't think he did either, right? So
I'll just listen. It's a good starting shot if you want to go with that.
I think he fulfills 2 of the 3 criteria. I don't think he fulfills the college one, but just to get us to the second round of hint here, let me go with Ronnie Lott and tell me I'm wrong, Justin.
You're wrong, Jerg.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's the USC guy. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah.
Did he play for at least 3 teams?
I think so, but he's also a 10-time Pro Bowler, so he only fulfilled 1 of the 3 requirements.
Well, at least 8. That was my personal goal. Yeah. So,
all right, next.
All right. Well, this Ohio native was drafted in the 4th round of the NFL supplemental draft by the Philadelphia Eagles.
Supplemental draft. Supplemental draft.
It was also 2-time first-team All-Pro and 1-time second-team All-Pro.
So 3 All-Pro teams, 8 Pro Bowls. Went to the Ohio State, is a Ohio native, supplemental draft pick.
Huh.
This is leading me to now consider who are very successful supplemental draft picks in the league.
There's not a lot of them, I don't think.
Yeah, but can you name them?
Supplemental guys?
Yeah. Probably not.
There's 2 that I know that are famous for supplementals, but one I don't remember where he went to college. One I know went to Oklahoma, though.
I have I have 2 names in my brain of guys who are supplemental players, but one of them went to Ohio State. He probably played for 3 teams, but it's not because he was good. It's because he wasn't that great. He definitely doesn't have the Pro Bowls or All Pros.
Okay.
Which is Terrell Pryor. That's not my guess. I'm just saying that's who came to my name, but it's not him.
That's what I thought you were talking about too.
And the other name, who I know he could have made maybe these amount of Pro Bowls and All Pros if he just wasn't an idiot earlier in his career, Josh Gordon. but obviously he didn't go to Ohio State. I think didn't he go to Baylor?
Josh Gordon? I don't know. He probably he went to Meth University, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, come on.
So I think you're thinking too recent.
You think you've got to go farther back?
I think so. So the guy that went to Oklahoma was Brian Bosworth.
Uh-huh.
I think he was drafted supplemental draft.
He was. I remember seeing something about him. He was drafted in the supplemental draft.
But there's a name that I'm thinking of. I think he went to Ohio State. The problem is I don't really remember him on any other team other than one. I don't remember him on offense. I don't remember him on any other team other than one.
Do you want to give me the name and we talk it out? We try to think if he was on more than one team.
Chris Carter.
Okay, he was on the Vikings obviously for a long time.
That's what I'm thinking of. I don't know if he was on any other team other than that.
No, he played for the Eagles early, didn't he? Before,
so that's two. But I'm trying to think of the third team. I can't picture Chris Carter in a third uniform. That's my thing. I know he was on the Eagles. Okay. I know he was on the Vikings. That's where he did a lot of his damage. Right. But I don't remember a third team. And if it was a third team, it was probably like a 1 year stint at the end of his career when he was all gassed out. But
if we're being honest, guys in that era, that was kind of the case.
Well, yeah, I can't picture it. That's why I'm not like super comfortable saying that name.
I get you, but remember, Rick, a couple weeks ago, I forget who the answer was, but I ran into a similar situation where I thought of the guy in the second round of guesses, but I didn't get him until the last round. But he fit every other category. So let's look at it. Chris Carter.
Let me think about this for a second too.
Okay, go ahead. I will break down while you think of more names. Chris Carter, almost fairly certain, like you said, all the damage he did in Minnesota, has to have the Pro Bowl number exactly at 8. All-Pro feels about the right number there because he did play in the same era as Jerry frickin' Rice and Terrell Owens and guys.
And
like
Randy Moss.
And Randy Moss eventually. So 3 All-Pros kind of makes sense.
The same team as Randy Moss.
Yeah, Randy Moss too, yeah.
So Pro Bowls, you can believe it because, multiple wide receivers. All-Pros, you can believe it because he played with a bunch of talented guys in that same era for him. He went to the Ohio State, right? I'm confident in your knowledge that he was a supplemental draft pick, and I want to say he probably was. I'm not denying, I'm just saying. He's played on at least 2 teams. Ohio native. I think he's Ohio native.
He checks off like every box except for that
third team.
What was that third team that he was on?
I think it's a good enough guess to where, like, if he fits everything else at this point, what's the harm in submitting him?
Yeah, I suppose. Why not?
Rick, this happened to me a few weeks ago. I don't know if Justin remembers, but I had the guess in round 2, but I didn't say it until round 3.
That's true. That's not true. You even said the name in round 2 and then didn't get. You guessed someone else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was too obvious, and then I'm like, it's the obvious answer. Oh, it was Ed Reed. It was
Ed Reed.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Rick, don't make the same mistakes as me. I trust your instinct.
Well, what if that happens twice?
Yeah, okay. I don't know what the third team was, but everything else checks off for me. So let's lock it in. Chris Carter.
It's just going to be so anticlimactic if it's not him.
I know, right?
Rick, the third team was the Miami Dolphins. He played for 1 year after his stint with the Vikings. He came back, I believe, in 2002. Where
can I search up 2002 real quick because I feel like that was a year.
He started 5 games, started 1 game, played in 5 total, had 1 touchdown. It is Chris Carter.
For some reason that year with the Dolphins I'm blocking out in my head.
Jamie,
I know it was 5 games, but just like I could never picture him in a Dolphins uniform. So, was Marino still the quarterback then?
No, it was Jay Fiedler.
Oh God.
I have the roster up right now. So Jay Fiedler and Ray Lucas were the 2 QBs that got the most on the team. Ricky Williams had 1,853 yards on the ground. Very impressive to say the very least. The leading wide receiver was a young man by the name of Chris Chambers. For himself. And defensively, if we are interested in that, the kicker, by the way, was Olindo Mare.
Olindo Mare was a great kicker.
Mark Royals was
that was the defense was Zach Thomas and Jason Taylor, right?
Patrick Surtain was also on that team.
Surtain was on the team too. Yeah.
And yes, Jason Taylor, 18 and a half sacks. Rob Burnett, Larry Chester, David Bowen, Zach Thomas. This is a lot of tackles, only half a sack for himself, but still an APL pro.
He wasn't a pass rusher. He was an open field guy. Yeah.
100 solo tackles. Sheesh. Sheesh.
Was that still who else were the wide receivers? Was that Chambers and Carter? Was it was Madison or McDuffie or Gadsden still on the team?
McKnight was there.
McKnight. Okay. Wow.
Let me go back to the receivers.
Wow.
We could have a little bit of fun with this. If freaking Pro Football Reference would work with me on the sorting here. So James McKnight was second. Randy McMichael, another youngster on that team.
The tight end, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes. And then Rob Conrad was their fifth leading receiver. Not a lot of receiving yardage, honestly.
Yikes.
So, honestly, it's mainly just like Justin mentioned Chris Carter. He had exactly 66 yards. He was 10th on that. Chris Carter
Sam Madison was on the defense, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but offensively, like the only player, I'll say this, the only player top 5 in receiving yards for the Dolphins that year was above the age of 27 was James McKnight.
Oh, yep. Okay.
That team was
Gadsden was on the IR. They had
that team was basically transitioning out of the Marino years. The last
I don't know if Justin remembers this name, because I don't know if he's too young to remember this guy when he was on the Jets back in the day. Dedrick Ward.
I'm only 1 year younger than you.
Justin, it feels like you're about 20 years younger than I am, based upon the life that I've lived and the gray hairs that I have in my head. So
it's because I was the intern while you guys were all working.
Yeah, I was the grizzled old man who couldn't get off the lawn fast enough. Yeah. Well, okay, Chris Carter. Wow.
That's fantastic name of that player, by the way, Justin.
Yeah. Good stuff. Supplemental draft threw me for a loop.
Through a loop.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, but it gave it to you. That was the clue you needed.
Where did he end up going? I forget. It was Ohio State. Yeah, I forget. I was
Ohio
like,
State.
He's Hall of Fame, right? Or no?
Do you know the coach that drafted him? Yeah, he is a Hall of Famer. That was coming to the next clue.
The coach that drafted him. Well, he was drafted by the Eagles, right?
Yep.
It's not Dick Vermeil, right? He wasn't around then.
Was he?
It is a Hall of Fame coach, though.
Buddy Ryan.
Oh wow.
Buddy Ryan, and then he was a surprise cut in his 4th year in the preseason after a falling out, as per Wikipedia, and to which he admits later was because he was caught with some substances and some issues.
Yeah, that'll do it.
It was the 80s and 90s. Things happened.
Well, he says that it's part of the thing that helped him turn his life around. And Buddy, he always gives a lot of credit to Buddy Ryan for helping him.
Yeah,
there you go.
Work through that stuff.
There you go. Fantastic addition of Name That Player. Chris Carter is checked off the list. Only several tens of thousands NFL players to go. These return Name That Players. Oh, Lordy. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another fan favorite segment. We just got fan favorite after fan favorite after fan favorite from Name That Player to the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge, where Rick, Justin, and I go through the landscape of NFL games in a given weekend. We pick games on a 4-to-1 point basis scale. 4 is the most confidence we have. 1, the least confidence we have. We must all pick 4 games. We must all pick at least 1 upset game. That must be with the lowest possible pick used with our 2-pointer. Can be used with the 1 or 3, but it must be used at least once in a week. We can't pick a tie if we do so choose, but it must be used with our 4-point pick. But the 4-pointer gets upgraded to a 5. Count them, yes, 5-pointer. Booker T's favorite number. It's a 10 points on the table on a weekly basis for us. 10 points on the table this week for the puppet, because I believe it's a full 16 games slated this week. And
everyone plays.
Yes, everyone plays. And by the way, as we go through this week, as we go through every single week that has come before, and every single week that will follow, when we look at the odds for these games, we look at who's favored going into these matchups. These odds are given and lines are given to us by our friends at
ESPN Bet.
Yes. It used to be DraftKings or FanDuel. No. Which one?
No, it was
Caesar Sportsbook.
Caesar Sportsbook.
Yes, Caesar Sportsbook.
Caesar Sportsbook kind of just rolled off the tongue a little better.
It really did.
But
it really did. But now
it's not terrible.
But now it's our friends at ESPN Bet. Yeah. Anyways, 4 games for each of us, 4 games for the puppet. Big week this week, up for grabs. Podfather, floor is yours. Give us the standings update.
Well, I had to kind of go back and just look to make sure that I had the right numbers in there, because we had some controversy from the Russian judges a couple weeks ago with the wrong numbers being given out for our numbers here. So believe it or not, Jurg. Actually, I mean, you can believe it.
I was gonna say, I think I might believe it.
Despite the obstacles and hurdles that we threw at Justin last week for his penalty of missing the show as an unscheduled absence and going against the Gopher, in spite of that, Jurg, you did not do yourself any favors.
Yeah.
You had a bit of a rough week. As a matter of fact, the two of you ended up with the same amount of points.
Yes, because we both missed on our 4 and our 2-point upset, but we both each got our 3 and our 1.
Correct, which means that the lead is still only 3. Jurg is at 86 going into this week, and Justin is at 83 going into this week. I myself had a banner week. Thank you very much. Just missed the 2-point game. Damn Chargers. 68 points for me though. So I think you're
in striking distance.
I was down by 19, and now I'm down by 15. So slowly creeping back in to make it a triple threat match potentially.
If either or both of us have like a 1 or 0 point week here in the next 2 weeks, and you keep going on a roll, we might have a triple threat to end the season.
And then we'll have to figure out the permutations of how we're going to make the picks, because it's going to be all sorts of chaos and nonsense.
Well, I think from a mathematical perspective, if you're within 10 points technically by the end of the season, you would be involved in the challenge, because we could both go winless that week. You go perfect, you win.
Well, no. What I'm saying by that is that instead of it being a head-to-head with 16 games and 8 picks, it would be head-to-head and 16 games, and then we each get 5 picks, and we have to figure out how we divvy it up from there, and then that last game could be for all the marbles or whatever the case is. Regardless, I have I kept my lead here? Yeah, I've actually extended my lead a little bit more on the Gopher. He's at 57 points, so he's way back in the ether there. So I will not have to do anything stupid or humiliating or foolish. Duncan is on the table for an episode where we're back on like a Saturday where it's back to normal. As you mentioned, Jurg, yes, 16 games this week. We are including the 3 Thanksgiving games and the 1 Black Friday game, along with our picks this week. And it's a lot going on here. There's a lot of interesting lines and a lot of interesting games that are kind of up for grabs in a sense. There's 2 very big lines. And I'm going to stay away from one of them because I don't know if you remember what happened last year in a similar game. So I'm going to stay away from that one, probably give it to Justin because he'll probably take that one because he's not going to be scared of it like I am. But I will kick things off by picking a team that I picked last week. They did very well for me. Then this is a traditional Thanksgiving game for them, and I think they're going to do well again here. They're on a hot streak, so again, this could be a game where they fall off a little bit. I think I picked them last year and they lost this game, but we're going to do it again and see what happens. It's going to be the Lions over the Bears as my 4-pointer this week.
I think I picked Detroit last year and they failed me, if I'm not mistaken.
I just remember both games last year were very surprising.
Yeah, I think so. I just think that the Lions are just on a roll right now that's just uncontained, and they are the number 1 seed right now. And just to keep that going, I mean, pound the Bears into submission, distance yourself, because the Vikings have a bit of a interesting matchup, and then the Packers are playing the Dolphins later on. So give me the Lions at 4 points, and let's take that and let's see what happens from there.
Let me tell you something, Rick. I don't like it.
You wanted the Lions?
I would have taken the Lions.
Yeah.
I don't like the Chiefs here either.
I don't
know what it is. It just, they weren't lights out last week, even though Mahomes had a good year, a good week.
Yep. I was going to say good year.
I don't think I think they're due for a loss. And I don't necessarily know why. I don't really think they should lose to the Raiders, or they will lose to the Raiders, but I'm avoiding it with my 4-point pick.
Aiden O'Connell did beat them last year.
I'm going to go I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
It's a good pick.
I respect that.
It's a really good pick.
I respect that. Nice little Dave Canales revenge game potential if
it's
Carolina wins that one. But yeah,
I think Carolina had a very good week last week, and they are going to expect to have another good week. The Bucks need this game to get back to 500. They need it way more than the Carolina Panthers do, and they are a much better team than the Carolina Panthers. Look for Mike Evans to really get going in this game.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Okay.
And Jerg takes the Chiefs because obviously.
I do think there is a little bit of gambler's fallacy with Kansas City. Like 12.5 is a really big line. But
Wait, you see draft day when they keep passing? Why did they pass? Why did they pass?
Do
I take them?
Yeah.
What do you know about Callahan?
It's 100% right now.
Yeah.
I will say, okay, I got bit by this before, literally this past freaking week. But does fortune not favor the bold sometimes?
Oh boy.
Give me the Commanders with my 4-point pick.
Oh. Okay. I mean, I thought you were going to go
never go wrong.
Titans,
I think it's a great pick.
So I thought he was going to pick the Titans.
Thanks for the sarcasm, Justin.
So I thought he was going to pick the Titans though, because last week he picked the Texans and the Titans beat them. So I figured he was going to try and reverse psychology.
No, the reverse only is with AFC South games. With
I see. Yes.
Clearly,
I see. Okay.
And for my 3-point pick, part of me wants to pick the Texans, but they're in Jacksonville. Weird, it happens in Jacksonville, dude. Like the Jags win some of these random home games for themselves.
Weird happens in the AFC South, man.
And it's really funny because, like, in the end, if it was a North team, you guys would be like, dude, what I don't know what it is about these North divisional teams, but like when they play divisional games, they get so much better. And then it's like, I don't know what's with these AFC South divisional games, but all the teams are just so much worse.
Yeah.
Agreed.
No. Didn't pick up on my 4, but I'll pick up on my 3. This is a big gamble, but gamble. Chiefs with my 3-pointer. Look, I get that they are due for a loss. I do agree with that concept, but I don't know if it comes this week. I think this is still a Kansas City team that they took the Buffalo loss on the chin, and I think they see the urgency because yes, Kansas City can win in any conditions in the postseason, but why not make life easier and guarantee the playoffs through home again? And getting a win here, Buffalo could be due for a loss here against San Fran. And if Buffalo loses and you pick up a win, you get a 2-game edge over them. That lets you sit pretty as you coast through the rest of the season. It could give you some extra rest time that you need in that final Week 18 game. So sure. Kansas City needs to lock in.
Your logic is completely sound. But
that being said, the Raiders are going to win by a
field goal. Let's look at the last 5 seasons.
Yes, I know.
They go off.
Yes.
They lose one game they're not supposed to.
100%.
A la the Broncos game, a la the Raiders last year. Yes. It wakes them the hell up. They are a complete football team. They roar into the playoffs. They demolish teams when everyone's like, oh, this is it for the Chiefs? Then they win the 3rd Super Bowl in a row. So I don't disagree with you. It is the right pick, but it's a tough one for sure.
If anything, to me, if I'm earmarking, I think this and I don't know what week number this is off the top of my head, but the December 15th matchup they have in Cleveland, that also gives me funky vibes for them. Because in no way, shape, or form should the Browns win that game, but Cleveland's probably going to win by like a Jameis Winston 4th and 15 to David Njoku. So,
I mean, yes.
There it is. But yes, Commanders and Chiefs.
We spoke about it earlier. It's just not – this is not the same 49ers team. Give me the Bills.
I don't blame you at all. Like this game is going to go one of two ways. The Bills are going to destroy them by 4 touchdowns, or the San Fran wins on a field goal. There's literally no medium or average.
Well, that leaves me in a precarious position here, but I think I'm going to be okay with that. I know that I hopped on when we were talking about this, but I think that this is actually an interesting matchup, and I know that this team is favored in this game, even though their record is woefully different compared to the other team that they're playing, but you got to believe that the offense is just better on one side of the ball than the other side of the ball. I'll take the Bengals at 3 over the Steelers for my 3-point pick there.
I do not blame you.
Again, yeah, I like the Steelers defense, but I like the Bengals offense a little bit more. And so I think that's just a clear key. And listen, if the Steelers put the offense, yeah.
The Bengals put up 3 touchdowns in the first 3 quarters. What are they going to do?
Yep.
Honestly.
No, I agree with you. And so that what that does though is that locks me into a 2-point upset pick, and I've got two to choose from here, and I don't like either one of them, which is I think kind of how things go when it comes to upset picks. That I end up just not liking the picks based upon how the years have gone. I think that I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to go with the fact that I think this team really struggled last week on offense, and the team they're playing is coming off of a crazy high. But to be fair, that team also just barely escaped with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take a team that's going to go into an unfriendly environment, win this game, and keep their hopes of a division title alive. Give me the Cardinals in an upset over the Vikings.
I was going to say I had a feeling you were leaning towards Arizona there.
Yeah, give me them. I think
I feel like Kyler's been traditionally good against Minnesota in his career.
Yeah, and again, I also think that this is a come down game for the Vikings. That high has just been, they're 9-2, they're flying high, but I think they're due for a letdown, and I think they can't keep pace with the Lions. And I think the Cardinals' offense, I think we're just waiting for Marvin Harrison to explode, and I think this is the game that he can do it in.
Do you want the stats real quick, Rick?
Go for it.
In 2 career games against the Minnesota Vikings total,
Yep.
Kyler Murray has thrown 726 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, he's also thrown 4 interceptions, to be fair. But he's definitely done his job in terms of just pure stats and yardage. Can I get the box scores of these games to see what his win-loss record is? I can. Give me one moment here.
That's also noted, but I also think, too, looking at this Vikings team, looking at this Vikings defense, they tend to not, I want to say they tend to not be as strong on the running attack. And so I look at the fact that you've got a decent enough running game with Connor and with Benson over there for Arizona. I feel like this rushing defense is gonna be in need. I mean, I feel like this could be a game where they get gashed. So I'll go with that.
That was one of my games I earmarked for my upset, so I don't blame you at all.
My other upset that I had, just so you know which one I was waffling between the two of them, is the other one that I had is Cleveland over Denver. And I just don't buy it because I think Bo Nix is hitting his stride at just the right time.
He is.
Yeah.
Let me give you a couple upsets that I'm feeling this week, because I think there was a lot of games that were around for upsets. I think let's talk about it. I think the Jets could upset the Seahawks because it doesn't make any sense for the Jets to win here.
Yes, sir.
They shouldn't win this game. They should get blown out by the Seahawks. They're at home.
Which logically means both Adams and Wilson will grab 2 touchdowns.
It helps nothing. It helps no one to win this game. It's an NFC game. It doesn't put them in any better standings. It's just going to hurt their draft position and screw them up for next year.
Yeah, but you know what?
It was a classic Seahawks to lose this game too.
You know what though? You know what the thing is that you're not focusing on? Again, we talk revenge games all the time, but wouldn't Gino just love to stick it to his old team that let
He's
him
done it plenty of times before, and
do it again? Why not?
It just
Why not?
Seahawks a 2-point road.
Let's see who else the Jets can fire.
Favorite. Yeah. The other game that I really like today as an upset is the Patriots against the Colts. I don't think the Colts are that good. Their defense is okay, but I think that Drake May has the ability to put up some serious points against this team, and I'm not sure that they can score against the Patriots defense at the same rate. So with all that being said, I'm going to go with the Eagles here. And I'm going to take that as the
that was my favorite for an upset.
Yeah, they're coming off such a performance, and like in theory they really shouldn't match up with the Ravens this way, but I don't know. I just think they're such a hot team right now, and the Ravens are just great, but they're not as hot as the Eagles. And I'm gonna ride the hot hand.
Yeah,
don't blame me.
I think that's fair. I do.
Yeah. Okay. Give me with my 2-point upset, because we're talking about 2-point upsets that we like. Give me the Saints for my 2. Rough game for the Rams. Rushing defense is not looking great for them right now. The Saints can get their rushing offense back in tow. And Saints have back-to-back games against the Rams and the Giants here. If they get 2 wins in a row, they're going to take on the Commanders at 6-7 at that point. Wild card spots in the balance. The Saints are. We thought it was a dead season. They fired their head coach.
Or
started to pick it up a little bit.
Or because of how bad this division is, could be division title.
Exactly. So
at 6-7.
So they're very much still there. So Saints with my 2, and this team, they failed me. And my only thing is,
sounds like you're a Jet fan.
I know, right?
That's a good one, Justin. I'm very 50-50 on this other game, but they need to bounce back in the biggest way. So give me the Texans with my 1-pointer.
Reasonable.
It's a good pick.
Yeah. It's in Duval, which I'm very hesitant on, but even if Trevor Lawrence plays, he's coming back from missing some time of injury. Joe Mixon and Nico Collins could very much go off. This is earmarked as a test of like, okay, you just had a disappointing loss as the Texans. You need to bounce back. And this could be a game to help you do that.
All right. I am going to take you gotta play a Thanksgiving, day game. I'm gonna take the Packers.
Nice. I was very 50-50 on that game, honestly, Justin, because the Packers, great game obviously last week. The Dolphins, their playoff lives are on the line. They seem to be playing pretty good. But Green Bay is the strongest team they faced in a couple weeks. So
see,
that defense.
I wanted that game to stay for me because I wanted to do a 1-point call out there because I was going to pick the Dolphins. I was going to say Tua, step the F up.
Right.
Because, what do we always say about Tua? Post-Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So.
But does it count if it's on Thanksgiving?
Well, I mean, it's Thanksgiving night, so all the stuff is done, so basically, yeah.
Some people are still eating.
Yeah, sure, in Hawaii, but who's watching football? Alrighty, well, so I got burned by the Chargers this week, so I don't want to pick them. I got burned by the Jets 2 weeks ago, so I'm not picking them. Ugh. I hate all 5 of these games now. I really do.
Would you like to list the 5 games real quick as you make your decision?
Dallas Giants. Hate it.
Yeah.
Chargers Falcons. Hate it.
Yeah.
Colts Patriots.
Yep.
Hate it.
I will say this: depending on the result, if the Colts lose this game next week, I think next week we're going to talk about maybe we're going to start talking about various little topics here and there around the league. I think Anthony Richardson's future needs to be brought up in some conversations.
Yeah. Jets Seahawks, really hate it. And then Browns Broncos, which I didn't want to touch for my 2-pointer because I have Cleveland beating Denver in my personal picks. Not a fan of that. Give me the Colts. I don't like it, but I'm thinking about the fact that if Richardson I know is very, very raw and very flashy, but this Patriots defense just has not looked good. And a blind squirrel finds a nut every so often. So maybe this could be you think it's going to be a good game from Richardson. He does okay, but it's really the Patriots defense just sucked at the end of the day. So I'm going to go with that.
I like Drake May. I like Drake May in this game.
I do too. I think it's going to be a good game for him, but I just didn't like any of my other matchups. I really did not like any of my other matchups for this one. Okay. Well, in that aspect, let me just lock in the picks for the idiot, aka the mascot, Justin's newest best friend forever. We're going with the Broncos at 4 for the Gopher. He's going to go back-to-back on the upset train for New York and New York. Giants, Jets, 3-2, and then Chargers at 1. So.
You must know something we don't. I guess not. He's in last place.
Hey,
You know how it is. The last place all the time, so it doesn't really even.
we do this for fun. There's going to be a season that happens where the Gopher just kicks our butts.
It might not
Won't
be
be
the
a Gopher
Gopher
anymore.
It might be someone different. It might be a flamingo.
Okay, mascot. Hey, one of these seasons we do this for shtick. One of these seasons, Rick is the mascot is gonna make picks, and we're just gonna get completely obliterated, and we're gonna be a podcast that lost to an inanimate object.
That's the day we hang it up, Jerg.
Well, I was gonna say you do realize that in order for that to happen, not only would they have to hit every single pick, but the wheel of chaos would have to land on 10x plus 1 every single time.
11.
Yeah. Sure.
10x plus 1.
The odds of that happening are infinitesimal, to use a big SAT word.
Hey, you never know. We've hit a couple 10x's even, so
We have.
It's right next to 10x plus 1.
We sure have. Sure have hit them.
Mute you, good sir. You missed the last show and you dare critique my math skills. Anyways, Rick, recap the final picks made across the show.
Sorry. Yep. Okay. All right. So the leader in the pool, Jared, goes Washington at 4, Kansas City at 3, New Orleans at 2, and Houston at 1, because clearly you haven't learned from your past mistakes.
What can I say? I have toxic habits sometimes.
Sure. Justin goes Tampa at 4, Buffalo at 3, Philadelphia at 2. And actually, interesting note here for you, Justin, because I'm going through the history, and I love my history here. You've hit the last time you've picked Philadelphia in your last 2 times you picked them. Week 10, you had them as your 3-pointer, and last week you had them as your 1-pointer. So the Eagles might be a good luck charm for you. It's an upset game, so that's interesting. And then the Packers at 1 point for you. I'm going with Detroit, who I had last week and actually the week before. So I'm 3 weeks in a row with the Lions. Going with them at 4, then the Bengals at 3, the Cardinals at 2, and the Colts at 1. And the Gophers picking Denver at 4, the Giants at 3, the Jets at 2, and the Chargers at 1 point for this week for our holiday tidings and greetings of Yule and all that other stuff. So there you go.
So that completes a Thanksgiving edition of the Pick Challenge, and we'll see what the standings do be after football in Turkey. Yeah, I cheated on the rhyming there. That being said, let's end off this program the way that we like to, per usual. Rantin' Rick's Rostrum Podium. The Podfather has topics to rant about, people. The Podfather, the floor, the Thanksgiving decor is yours. Send us home.
So I have an honorable mention for this week. I know I normally try not to stay away from a 4 podium pick, but I have an honorable mention this week. And I'm going to quote Damon Wayans, his character, Michael Kyle from My Wife and Kids, when I say this. And it's going to take me a bit, so I actually have it written down as well. But this is for a certain somebody who decided that it was time for him to take a break from social media this week for the honorable mention. And that would be LeBron James Sr., or LeBron James, the whatever it is, deciding to go off of social media, maybe in response to something else that happened. I don't know. So here's the quote from Michael Kyle to his son about moving out and getting his own place. And it goes very well for LeBron James here. So long, see you, sucker. Bon voyage, arrivederci. Goodbye, good riddance. Peace out. Let the doorknob hit you where the good Lord split you. Don't come back around here no more. Hasta la vista, kick rocks, and get the hell out. Very simple. Thank you, LeBron, for letting me do that, of course. Number 3 on my list. I have a real problem here, gents. I really do. As you know, I'm in a separate pool. So I have a fantasy league, and then I have a pool that we do for money. And the past 2 weeks, I have finished in a tie for first place in the weekly pool. So that means that normally I'm entitled to some money, which is fair. They have money and all sorts of things. Both of these past 2 weeks, I have been gypped out of money because of tiebreakers. And I can't stand them no more. Last week, when it was a tiebreaker, I ended up splitting the jackpot because the person that I was tied with picked the same exact amount of points for the game on Monday night that I did, which is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And this week, I lost the tiebreaker, even though I was first place in the league going into the Monday night game, because, God forgive me, the person picked a higher point total than I did, so therefore they win the tiebreaker, they get the money, and I get jack squat. I'm sorry, but I pay a certain amount of money to be in this pool. I demand some money back for being in first place. And so when I win this pool and get my $600, I'm retiring from the league. So all y'all can go kick rocks if you want to, of course. That's my number 3. Number 2 for the podium this week. It's Thanksgiving, gentlemen. Last year, I did a roast of the ambrosia salad, and I'm sure you all enjoyed that, of course. This year, I'm going to do a roast not of a food, but of another tradition that happens. But this also ties into something that happened earlier in the year. Why in God's name are we playing college sporting events overseas? It's really basketball. I mean, I know football does it with the Ireland games and all that. I get that. But, like, we opened this year for women's college basketball with, I think it was USC playing, I want to say Notre Dame, but I could be wrong, in Paris. And it's like, why? That's stupid. And now we have all these Thanksgiving tournaments that are happening in like convention halls and what I have to call cafegematoriums in the Cayman Islands or in the Bahamas or Cancun or whatnot. And it's like, shouldn't these kids be going home to see their families for Thanksgiving instead of, spending it on a beach in Mexico, like in November? What good are we getting out of this? They're playing a game in front of like 200 people in a hotel lobby because we can't afford to actually have an actual gymnasium for any of this stuff. So why don't we just stop this tradition and have them play stateside? It's just better that way because I don't know, maybe the family can actually go see the game instead of spending out a truckload of money on a one-way ticket to Kingston, Jamaica for no real reason. It's not like they're getting a break to go see Bob Marley's house anyways, which would be really nice, but they're not doing that either. So, that's a problem. And number 1 for me, you didn't think that I was going to let you off of Thanksgiving that easily without mentioning a food item as well. But this is not really a Thanksgiving food item. It's more something that I think I've thought about more recently and actually came to me on Twitter or X, I suppose. Olives. Disgusting. The devil of all foods. And this is coming from a deep-seated trauma that I had when I was a very young child. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, I will invite you back into the mind of 8-year-old Podfather, back when I was a young sprite. I was at a party, a family function, with with my parents, my sister, all those sort of things. And me being the naive, gullible 8-year-old at the time, I was told, close your eyes. I'm gonna throw you a potato chip. Close your eyes and catch it in your mouth. Like, okay, no problem. So here I am, 8 years old, potato chip, ready for it. I know the chip's coming. I'm ready. And all of a sudden, an olive enters the picture. And not one of those like small black olives that you get at like, the pizzeria, like one of those. No. This is a full green olive with the red in the middle. And like it just ruined that entire rest of the day for me. And so because of that, anytime that I see an olive or olives in like a buffet line or olives as a topping or anything like that, I immediately just have a flashback to that moment. And it just haunts me. So it's almost like a couple of years earlier, and this is another deep-seated trauma that is more funny than it is harmful. My father, love the man, of course, decided that he would sit me down and we would watch a movie, on like a weekend night. And I was like, okay, cool, weekend night, whatever. I was 6 years old at the time. He puts on The Birds. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. When I tell you that there are still moments where I still recoil in fear and shudder when the morning dove screeches and flies off if I get too close to it, those big fat pigeons in the morning, that's because of that. Deep-seated trauma because of birds. Birds and olives ruined my childhood. Yeah, and so you wonder why I'm the person that I am today, and why I have rants and why I have podiums and all sort of thing. You can go back to those two events primarily as the reason for that. That is the impetus for having a rant podium. The Birds by Hitchcock and an olive instead of a potato chip.
Flying
I,
olives.
I exactly. I would say that too, Justin, but you know, damn those olives and damn Tippi Hedren.
Damn those olives.
And here I thought the trauma dumping would occur when we eventually do that tell-all episode of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, but there's a preview for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, no, there's more to be had, but this needed to be spoken about now because it just needed to be.
There you go. Well, I will agree with you on this, Rick. I hate olives as well. So we eliminate them. I don't care.
I'm happy with them. There's like the one thing that's like, if you could eliminate one thing from the world entirely, like bees or insects or whatever, no, eliminate olives. I'll take a mosquito bite any day instead of seeing an olive.
That's bold.
Yeah.
That's bold, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of bold, this was another bold and brave expedition into the analysis of NFL, brought to you by your favorite football podcast out there, the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Thanksgiving chaos has been completed for us. Enjoy the upcoming holiday, ladies and gentlemen. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the time off of work. Get set, get ready for the last month of the year, and get set and get ready for the next 6 weeks of NFL football that will decide the postseason and the interesting matchups, performances, and other such things of the like that'll come to you very, very shortly. That being said, the beautiful Thanksgiving background that we have behind all of us on camera, it's a perfect way to go off. So thank you all for joining us on this week's edition of Fun Football and Chaos. Have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you guys next time for the next edition of this beautiful program. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.